son, Paul, whenever he did portraits of his children, he usually got to be a little bit more sentimental or more smiling and more naturalistic than in everything else he did, but still the archetype is there. This is a costume of the Harlequin and the little hat of the Harlequin. And the child is sitting on a chair that was made famous in many of the paintings that Picasso had done of his mother, Olga. So there are, oh yes, that's interesting also, is that in Picasso's life, not only were some musical instruments or bottles of liquor or something very, very important to him, but some of the furniture that he had had in his apartment, in his atelier for I don't know how long, he kept them again and again, using them in his paintings, if not in his life. So there, that little chair, the black chair, which had tapestry on it, I still saw it many, many years later. It was still there in the castle of Boisgelou. So this painting is called The Dance. Of course, you know that since 1916 he had been working with Diaghilev and the Russian ballet, etc. So he had quite a good idea of what movement is made of. And there, it's very interesting. Also, there must have been something for Picasso particularly special in the number 3, because as you see, you have the 3 musicians, you have many times you have a number of objects that are always like a trinity, so to speak. And there you have the 3 dancers. So the dancer to the right is kind of maybe masculine, you know, like the dancer in the ballet were always carrying the female dancers on their arms, etc., which is kind of almost a shadow rather than something else. The dancer to the left, which is completely Dionysiac, you know, completely out in a trance, so to speak, and was very, very agitated. And the one in the center is the convergence of the two. There are the 2 extremes, the one to the right, which is Apollinian, the one to the left, which is Dionysiac, and the one in the center, which is pure vertical élan. And I think this painting is a very important witness to this knowledge of movement, what movement could bring, you know, an elevation of the muscular part of the body, etc., etc. So I find it a very, very important painting also. Now this is also 1925, and it's well-known studio with plaster head. So there is not only there is a plaster head, but there is also a plaster foot and a plaster arm. And in the background, you have the impression that you see a landscape, but it's not a landscape. It is a model of a little, it's a diminutive model of a theater, of a theater theater decor, you know. So that, as a matter of fact, it gives you the effect that is something is receding in the back of the painting, but it's also simply an object. And then there is again, you see there is the book open with writing, and the T of the architect. So that still life gives us in a sense, a lot of information. It's kind of informatic about what information you could get from a still life. You know, there it is a very constructive still life. You could say even it's a portrait of the architect, you know, and the architect with some parts of the anatomy of the foot, the arm, the head, the tool, the tea, etc., and even the stage set that is in the background, the stage set. And then, of course, there is a fruit somewhere, which seems to be a little bit bizarre in that context, but there is also a branch of a tree there. Maybe the laurel, which would be an image of becoming well-known or something. And this is the well-known large nude in a red armchair of 1929. Of course, that is rather, I think, a kind of very satirical rendition of a female nude, you know, because all the parts of the female nudes are there, but they are really in a great disarray. And then the woman, of course, is sitting on that famous red armchair. There was a black chair and then the red armchair, which, whether it still existed or not, still existed in his painting until certainly the end of the 40s. And so you see, you have I used to call it the nude spaghetti, because you have the impression that all the arms and legs, etc., are all like on a plate of spaghetti, you know. And then of course, it was, I think, a criticism of Matisse Odalisque that was certainly aimed at Matisse Odalisque, and it was also aimed at his wife, Olga, because by 1929, they didn't agree on anything at all, and she wanted to have a life, you know, more kind of with modernité and all that, and he just wanted to paint and be left alone. So I think that painting is very interesting because it is really a very open criticism of both his wife and Matisse at the same time. And that is one of the corridors. He did many corridors, and the theme of the bull and here the horse is disemboweled, and the matador who has been wounded is on top of the bull, and next to the bull the red muleta, you know, which is the cape by which the matador tries to maneuver. The bull is there also. So it's an image of death, and I think it's a bit more realistic, even though it's not anatomical at all in truth, but it's maybe more realistic than some of these other paintings of the same period. And again, what is there? It is the death of the matador. So there is, again, one of his most favorite subject matter, death. But you cannot be always in the mood of terror, etc. So there we have a very peaceful depiction of two girls. Supposedly, one of them is Marie-Thérèse and the other is her sister. It's difficult to say which one is which, but anyway, it's interesting because one of them seems to be asleep, and therefore normally it should be Marie-Thérèse, but I think that the color purple is not a leitmotif for Marie-Thérèse, so I think Marie-Thérèse is the one on the right, with a kind of turquoise dress and some flowers in her